The damaged ship floated silently in the black void of space. Its hull was torn open in several places, and small fires still burned inside the broken vessel. The Dalvian warship approached slowly, its massive shadow falling over the wreckage like a predator closing in on wounded prey. Commander Thelvor stood on the bridge of his ship, his reptilian eyes studying the human vessel with interest. The Dalvians were conquerors, a species that had crushed hundreds of worlds beneath their clawed feet. They had built an empire on fear and violence, and they knew weakness when they saw it. This small human ship was weak, pathetic even. "Scan for life signs," Thelvor ordered, his forked tongue flicking between his sharp teeth. The scanning officer checked his instruments. "One life form detected, Commander. Human, barely alive." Thelvor smiled. Humans were new to the galaxy. They had only recently developed faster-than-light travel and had made contact with other species just a few years ago. Most galactic powers viewed them as soft, primitive creatures who had no business among the stars. The Dalvians saw them as potential slaves or test subjects for their laboratories. "Prepare a boarding team," Thelvor said. "I want that human alive." 20 minutes later, Dalvian soldiers forced their way through the airlock of the damaged ship. They moved through the dark corridors with weapons ready, their night vision allowing them to see perfectly in the darkness. The ship was small, designed for perhaps 5 or 6 crew members. But there was only one person aboard now. They found him in what remained of the medical bay. A cryopod lay on its side, its glass front cracked and leaking preservation fluid onto the floor. Inside was a human male, unconscious but breathing. He was tall for his species, with dark hair and a face covered in old scars. His body was lean and muscular, built for combat rather than comfort. More scars covered his arms and chest, visible through his torn clothing. The Dalvian soldiers pulled him from the pod and bound his hands with metal restraints. He didn't wake up, his body still half frozen from cryosleep. They carried him back to their ship like a trophy. When they arrived at Christos Station 3 days later, the prisoner was awake but silent. He walked under his own power, flanked by 4 armed guards through the massive detention facility. Other prisoners watched from their cells as he passed. Some were human-like, others were completely alien. All of them were here because the Dalvian Empire had decided they were criminals, rebels, or simply inconvenient. Warden Kixtal waited in the processing center. He was larger than most Dalvians, his scales darker and his claws sharper. He had run Christos Station for 12 years, and in that time, he had processed thousands of prisoners. None of them ever left. "Another human," Kixtal said with disgust. "What did this one do?" Thelvor shrugged. "We found him in a damaged ship. The rest of his crew was dead. He might have useful information about human military capabilities." Kixtal examined the prisoner more closely. The human stared back at him with cold, dark eyes that showed no fear. Most prisoners were afraid when they arrived at Christos. They begged or cried or tried to fight. This one just stood there, watching and waiting. "What is your name?" Kixtal demanded. The human said nothing. "I asked you a question." Still nothing. Kixtal struck him across the face with the back of his clawed hand. The blow would have knocked most species unconscious. The human's head snapped to the side, blood running from his split lip, but he slowly turned back to face the warden, his expression unchanged. "Process him," Kixtal ordered. "Cell block 7. If he won't talk, we'll make him talk." The guards dragged the prisoner to the processing station, where they scanned his biometric data and searched what remained of his ship's computer for information. Most of the files were corrupted or destroyed, but they found fragments. A name, Jiho, an age 32 standard years, and a military designation that made the processing officer pause. "Warden," the officer called. "There's something here you should see." Kixtal walked over and looked at the screen. Among the corrupted data was a call sign, still clearly visible. "Reaper, what does that mean?" Kixtal asked. The officer shook his head. "Unknown. Probably just a nickname. Humans are dramatic about such things." Kixtal grunted. "It doesn't matter. Throw him in with the others." Cell Block 7 was the worst section of Christos Station. It held the most dangerous prisoners, the ones who had killed guards or started riots or simply refused to break under torture. The cells were small, barely 3 meters by 3 meters, with stone floors and no windows. Each cell held 2 or 3 prisoners, forcing them to live in close quarters with strangers who might try to kill them in their sleep. Jiho was thrown into a cell with 2 other prisoners. One was a telkari, a species that looked like a cross between an octopus and a spider, with multiple tentacles and too many eyes. The other was a chikris, an insectoid creature with 4 arms and a hard exoskeleton that clicked when he moved. The door slammed shut, and Jiho sat down in the corner, his back against the wall. He touched his split lip and examined the blood on his fingers. Then he closed his eyes and began to breathe slowly, methodically, like someone performing a meditation ritual. The chikris watched him with compound eyes that reflected the dim light. "You're human," the insectoid said in broken galactic common. "First human I've seen here." Jiho opened his eyes but didn't respond. "They'll torture you," the chikris continued. "They torture everyone eventually. You should prepare yourself." "I've been tortured before," Jiho said quietly. His voice was calm, almost gentle, which made the words more disturbing. The Telkari prisoner shifted nervously in the opposite corner. "What did you do to end up here?" "I survived," Jiho said. The chikris clicked his mandibles thoughtfully. "You have many scars. You are a soldier?" "I was. What kind of soldier?" Jiho looked at the insectoid for a long moment. His eyes were empty, like looking into a deep well with no bottom. "The kind they send when everyone else is already dead." The chikris said nothing after that. He had seen many dangerous beings during his time in Christo Station, but there was something different about this human, something that made his instincts scream at him to be careful. The scars weren't just marks on skin. They were a story, and it wasn't a story with a happy ending. Outside the cell, the guards laughed and joked about the new prisoner. Inside, Jiho sat in the darkness and waited. He had been a prisoner before. He had been tortured before. He had been left for dead before. He was still here, and somewhere, very far away, people who knew his name were already planning. 3 weeks passed in cell block 7. Jiho said little and kept to himself. He ate the terrible food they provided without complaint. He slept in short intervals, always with his back to the wall. When the other prisoners talked, he listened but rarely responded. The chikris had learned not to ask too many questions. News traveled slowly through Christo Station, passed along through whispers and coded messages tapped on cell walls. Prisoners formed networks to survive, trading information like currency. And information about the new human prisoner was becoming valuable. Besselin was a Telkari who had once been an information broker before the Dalvian Empire caught him selling military secrets. He had been in Christo Station for 5 years, and in that time he had built connections with nearly every prisoner block. When he heard about the human with the call sign Reaper, something in his vast memory clicked. He called in favors and accessed fragments of data that he had memorized years ago. Military intelligence reports, classified operations, whispered stories that most species dismissed as propaganda or lies. And slowly, piece by piece, he assembled a picture that terrified him. Vesselin made his way to cell block 7 during the daily exercise period. Prisoners were allowed 1 hour in the common area, a large room with rusted equipment and fighting rings where the guards would sometimes force prisoners to battle for their entertainment. Jiho sat alone in a corner, watching everything and everyone. The Telkari approached carefully. Jiho's eyes tracked him the entire way. "May I sit?" Vesselin asked in perfect galactic common. Jiho nodded once. Vesselin settled his tentacled body onto the floor nearby. "I know who you are," he said quietly. "Then you know more than I do," Jiho replied. "Your call sign?" "Reaper. It appears in 7 classified intelligence reports from various galactic militaries. Each report mentions a human special operations unit called the Ghost Division. They say this unit was sent on missions that regular soldiers couldn't complete. Impossible missions. Suicide missions." Jiho's expression didn't change. "Lots of soldiers have dramatic call signs." "True," Vesselin agreed. "But only one has a confirmed kill count of over 300 combat engagements against superior forces. Only one was present at the Kepler Station massacre, where an entire pirate fleet was destroyed from the inside. Only one was reported dead at least 4 times, yet somehow kept appearing in operation reports." "You believe old stories?" Jiho asked. "I believe patterns. I believe data. And the data says you are extremely dangerous." Jiho was quiet for a moment. Then he leaned forward slightly. "If I'm so dangerous, why are you sitting here talking to me?" "Because dangerous people are useful. And because I want to know if the stories are true." "Did you really kill 40 Kralgoth warriors on Sigma 7? 37, Jiho corrected. The other 3 died from their own explosives. Veselin felt a chill run through his body. The Kralgoth were one of the most feared warrior species in the galaxy. Killing even one in single combat was considered an impressive feat. Killing 37 meant something else entirely. "Why are you here?" Veselin asked. "Why would someone like you allow yourself to be captured?" "I didn't allow anything," Jiho said. "My ship was ambushed. My team died. I survived. That's all. Your team is looking for you. They think I'm dead. Are you sure?" Jiho didn't answer that question. The conversation ended when the guards announced the end of exercise time. Prisoners returned to their cells, but Veselin immediately began spreading the information he had gathered. He told a few trusted prisoners. They told others. Within days, everyone in Cell Block 7 knew that the quiet human was far more than he appeared. Warden Kickstall heard the rumors too. At first, he dismissed them as typical prisoner mythology. Every facility had stories about legendary inmates who could fight armies single-handed or escape from impossible situations. But the whispers kept growing, and Kickstall was not a fool. He decided to test the human. The pit was located in the lowest level of Christos Station. It was a circular arena surrounded by observation platforms where guards would watch prisoners fight to the death. Sometimes it was used for punishment. Sometimes it was used for entertainment. Always it was deadly. Guards came for Jiho during sleep cycle. They dragged him from his cell and down through the station's dark corridors. The Chikris and other prisoners watched silently as he was taken away. Many thought they would never see him again. Jiho was thrown into the pit without ceremony. The arena floor was stained with old blood, and the walls were covered in scratches where desperate prisoners had tried to climb to freedom. Above, on the observation deck, Kickstall and 24 guards watched with interest. "Bring out the Kralgoth," Kickstall ordered. A massive gate opened on the opposite side of the arena. What emerged made even the guards nervous. The Kralgoth stood 3 meters tall, covered in thick armor-like skin that could turn away blades and small-caliber bullets. Its arms were like tree trunks ending in claws that could tear through metal. Its face was all teeth and rage. The Kralgoth had killed 8 prisoners in previous pit fights. It was undefeated. Jiho stood in the center of the arena, unarmed and wearing only prison clothes. He watched the Kralgoth approach with that same empty expression he always wore. The creature roared, a sound that echoed through the chamber and made several guards step back involuntarily. Jiho didn't move. The Kralgoth charged, crossing the arena in seconds. Its massive fist swung down toward Jiho's head with enough force to shatter concrete. And then things happened very fast. Jiho moved at the last possible moment, his body sliding sideways as the Kralgoth's fist crashed into the floor where he had been standing. Before the creature could recover, Jiho was already behind it. He leaped onto its back, his arm wrapping around its thick neck. The Kralgoth roared again and tried to throw him off, but Jiho held on with a grip that seemed impossible for someone his size. He shifted his weight, using the creature's own momentum against it. They spun, the Kralgoth stumbling, trying to reach behind itself to grab the human. Jiho's legs wrapped around the creature's torso. His arm tightened around its neck, not trying to choke it but positioning it precisely. Then with a single violent motion he twisted. The crack echoed through the pit like a gunshot. The Kralgoth fell forward, its massive body hitting the arena floor with a crash that shook the observation deck. It didn't move again. Jiho rolled clear and stood up slowly. Blood dripped from his knuckles where the Kralgoth's rough skin had torn his hands, but he didn't seem to notice. He looked up at Kickstall with those same cold, empty eyes. The warden stared back, his mouth slightly open in shock. Around him, guards stood frozen. They had seen the Kralgoth kill trained warriors. They had seen it rip prisoners apart with its bare hands, and this human had killed it in 17 seconds. "Get him out of there," Kickstall said quietly. "Put him in solitary confinement." As guards entered the pit to retrieve Jiho, Kickstall realized he had made a terrible mistake. This wasn't just a prisoner. This wasn't just a soldier. This was something else entirely. And somewhere in his vast empire, the Dalvian High Command had no idea what they had captured. Solitary confinement was a small metal box 2 meters wide and 3 meters long. No windows. No light except for a dim emergency strip along the ceiling. They brought food once a day and water twice. Prisoners in solitary were meant to break down mentally, to become desperate and afraid in the darkness. Jiho sat cross-legged on the floor and breathed. In and out, slow and controlled. He had been in worse places. He had been buried alive once during a mission on a mining world. He had spent 3 days crawling through collapsed tunnels with a broken leg before reaching the surface. Darkness was nothing. Silence was nothing. He had made friends with both a long time ago. Above, in the station's command center, Warden Kickstall was dealing with a different problem. A transmission had arrived from human space marked as urgent diplomatic communication. The message was addressed to the Dalvian High Command, but a copy had been forwarded to Christos Station. Kickstall played the message on the main screen. A human woman appeared dressed in formal diplomatic clothing. She was young, perhaps in her late 20s, with dark hair pulled back professionally. Her name appeared at the bottom of the screen. Ambassador Hyejin, Human Coalition Diplomatic Corps. This message is directed to the Dalvian Empire and specifically to Christos Station, she began. Her voice was calm and professional. We have received confirmation that you are holding a human citizen named Jiho. He is a member of our military and is protected under the Galactic Accords regarding treatment of prisoners of war. We formally request his immediate release and return to human space. Kickstall laughed. The Galactic Accords were guidelines that most civilized species followed, but the Dalvian Empire had never signed them. They didn't consider themselves bound by anyone else's rules. The message continued. We understand that you may not be familiar with proper protocol regarding human military personnel. We are prepared to negotiate for his release through peaceful diplomatic channels. However, we must stress that time is important. We hope you will choose the path of cooperation. The message ended with contact information for the Human Coalition Diplomatic Office. Kickstall immediately forwarded the message to Commander Thelvor, who was still in the sector. The commander's response came quickly and was exactly what the warden expected. Ignore the human demands, Thelvor said. They are a weak species trying to appear strong. We will keep the prisoner for research purposes. If they complain, remind them that they have no power to enforce their requests. The Dalvian Empire does not take orders from humans. Kickstall sent a formal response to Ambassador Hyejin. The message was short and dismissive. Your request is denied. The prisoner will remain in Dalvian custody. Do not contact us again regarding this matter. He thought that would be the end of it. 3 days later, Ambassador Hyejin sent another message. This one was shorter. She appeared on screen, and this time there was something different in her eyes, something cold. Warden Kickstall, Commander Thelvor, members of the Dalvian High Command. This is your final warning. Release Jiho immediately. If you refuse, what happens next will be your responsibility. You have been warned. The transmission ended. Kickstall showed the message to Commander Thelvor, who was even less impressed than before. Empty threats, the commander said. What will they do? Send their small fleet against our empire? They are like children playing at war. Thelvor sent his own message back to the humans. It was mocking and cruel, explaining in detail how Jiho would be studied, tested, and eventually dissected to learn more about human biology. He sent images of Jiho in his solitary cell, meant to show the humans that their soldier was now property of the Dalvian Empire. In the solitary cell, Jiho sat in darkness and continued breathing. He knew someone would come. His people always came. It was just a matter of time. 72 hours after Ambassador Hyejin's final warning, the night shift began on Christos Station. 200 guards were on duty, monitoring 6,000 prisoners across 12 cell blocks. The station's defensive systems were online and fully operational. 12 automated weapons platforms surrounded the facility, each capable of destroying an approaching ship before it got within weapons range. At exactly midnight station time, all 12 weapons platforms went offline simultaneously. The main power grid flickered once, twice, then stabilized. The chief security officer tried to run diagnostics, but his system showed everything was normal. The weapons platforms simply weren't responding. Send maintenance crews to check the platforms, he ordered. Before the crews could even reach their ships, the first hull breach occurred. Then another. And another. 6 breach points in total, spread across different sections of the station. Alarms began screaming throughout the facility. Battle stations, the security chief shouted. We're under attack. But the attackers were already inside. They moved through the corridors like ghosts, dressed in black combat armor that seemed to absorb light. Their weapons made almost no sound when they fired, just soft coughs that dropped Dalvian guards before they could even raise their weapons. They moved with precision and speed that seemed impossible, clearing rooms and hallways in seconds. The security feeds showed glimpses of them, but it was never enough to get a clear view. 5 figures, maybe 6. They used the station's own layout against the defenders, cutting through bulkheads and using ventilation shafts to bypass strong points. When Dalvian reinforcements tried to set up defensive positions, the attackers simply went around them, or through them with overwhelming force. Warden Kixtal watched the security feeds in growing horror. "Who are they?" "The symbols on their armor," one of his officers said, zooming in on a frozen frame. "Those are human military markings." "Impossible," Kixtal hissed. "Humans don't have this kind of capability." But the evidence was right there on the screens. The attackers reached cell block 4 and began opening cells. But they weren't freeing everyone. They were selective, speaking briefly to certain prisoners before moving on. Some prisoners they armed with weapons taken from dead guards. Others they left locked up. "They're organizing a prison break," the security chief said. "They're building an army. Stop them." Kixtal roared. "Send every available guard. Kill them all!" But stopping the Ghost Division was easier ordered than accomplished. They had been fighting impossible battles long before anyone in this station was born. They knew how to turn a prison into a fortress and prisoners into soldiers. Within an hour, 3 cell blocks were in open revolt, and the guards were losing ground. The leader of the attack team was a human named Taijin. He was older than most of his squad, with gray in his dark hair and scars that matched the ones on Jiho's body. He moved through the chaos with calm efficiency, calling orders to his team in short, clipped phrases. "Minho, secure the armory. Doyen, take 3rd Squad and hold the western corridor. Salmon, I need those security systems down now." A woman's voice came back through his radio. "Working on it. Their encryption is tougher than expected. Work faster." Taijin checked his tactical display. They had control of 6 cell blocks now, and the station's guards were falling back to defensive positions. Good. That was exactly what he wanted them to do. Let them consolidate. Let them think they were building a strong defense. "Do we have his location?" Taijin asked. "Solitary confinement sublevel 9, Somin replied. "Heavy security. They moved him after the pit incident." "The pit incident?" "According to the prison records, he killed a Kralgoth in 17 seconds. Taijin smiled grimly. "That sounds about right. Let's go get him." Sublevel 9 was the most secure area of Christo Station. Only the most dangerous prisoners were kept here, locked in individual cells with reinforced doors and constant surveillance. The corridor leading to the solitary confinement area was narrow, forcing anyone who approached to come in single file. Guard stations were positioned at regular intervals, each with clear fields of fire down the hallway. It should have been impossible to reach. Taijin and his team bypassed the main corridor entirely. They cut through the floor of the level above, dropping down into the maintenance tunnels that ran beneath the prisoner cells. The tunnels were tight, barely wide enough for a person to crawl through, but the Ghost Division had trained in worse conditions. They moved in silence, their thermal imaging showing the heat signatures of guards above them. "Target cell is 30 meters ahead," Somin whispered through the radio. 4 guards inside the security station, 2 more patrolling the corridor. "Minho, Doyen, take the patrols." "Quiet," Taijin ordered. "Everyone else on my mark." 2 members of the team split off, moving ahead through a parallel tunnel. Seconds later, Taijin heard 2 soft sounds like someone exhaling sharply. The patrol guard's heat signatures disappeared from his display. "Patrol's down," Minho confirmed. Taijin counted to 3 in his head, then triggered the breaching charge they had placed on the tunnel ceiling. The explosion was small and directed, blowing a hole just large enough for a person to fit through. Smoke poured into the security station above. The Ghost Division moved like they had done this 1,000 times before because they had. They came through the hole fast, weapons already firing. The Dalvian guards barely had time to reach for their weapons before they were down. The entire engagement lasted less than 5 seconds. Taijin moved to the control panel and began working the door locks. "Somin, I need these doors open. Giving you access now." The heavy metal door to Jiho's cell began to slide open. Taijin raised his weapon, not sure what condition his old friend would be in after weeks in solitary confinement. Some people broke in isolation, even strong people, even soldiers. The door opened completely, revealing the dark cell inside. For a moment, Taejin saw nothing, then movement in the shadows. Jiho stepped forward into the light of the corridor, looking exactly the same as he had the last time Taejin saw him. Maybe a little thinner, maybe a few more bruises, but his eyes were clear and focused. "Took you long enough," Jiho said. Taejin lowered his weapon and allowed himself a small smile. "You're welcome." He tossed Jiho a combat rifle and a knife. Jiho caught them both, checked the rifle's magazine automatically, then strapped the knife to his thigh. Just like that, he was a soldier again. The prisoner was gone. The weapon was back in its hand. "What's the situation?" Jiho asked. "We control 6 cell blocks. Station security is falling back to defensive positions. We've got about 300 freed prisoners willing to fight. Another 200 who are just trying to escape. Station command is still intact. Thelvor, the commander who captured you, he's barricaded in the command center with about 50 elite guards." Jiho's expression didn't change, but something cold flickered in his eyes. "Good." They moved through the station together, the Ghost Division falling into practiced formations around Jiho. He hadn't fought beside these people in months, but it felt natural, like coming home. They communicated with hand signals and short radio bursts, moving through the chaos of the prison riot with purpose. The freed prisoners were doing their part. Some were attacking guard stations, forcing the Dalvians to spread their forces thin. Others were sabotaging systems, cutting power to certain sections or opening airlocks to create diversions. The station was falling apart section by section. "Command center is 2 levels up," Taejin said as they reached a main stairwell. "Heavy resistance expected." "I'll handle it," Jiho said. Taejin grabbed his arm. "You just got out of solitary. You're not at full strength." "I'm strong enough for this." They stared at each other for a moment. Taejin had known Jiho for 8 years. They had fought on 12 worlds together. He knew what that look in Jiho's eyes meant. This wasn't about tactics or strategy. This was personal. "Don't do anything stupid," Taejin said. "I never do." Jiho moved ahead, climbing the stairs toward the command center. Behind him, the rest of the Ghost Division took positions to provide support if needed. But deep down, they all knew he wouldn't need it. The command center was protected by the station's elite guard, soldiers specially trained and equipped to protect important Dalvian officers. They wore heavier armor than regular guards and carried more powerful weapons. They had set up barricades at the entrance to the command center, creating a killing zone that anyone approaching would have to cross. When Jiho reached the corridor leading to the command center, he saw the barricades and the guards waiting behind them. 20 soldiers, maybe more, all of them with weapons trained on the corridor. He didn't slow down. The first shot came when he was 50 meters away. Jiho was already moving, his body dropping and rolling as plasma bolts burned through the air where he had been standing. He came up running, closing the distance faster than the guards expected. His rifle came up, firing in short bursts that found gaps in the barricades. One guard fell, then another. The elite guards weren't poorly trained. They adjusted their fire, trying to track Jiho as he moved. But he was always somewhere else, always in motion, using the corridor's support pillars for cover. When his rifle ran empty, he dropped it and kept moving forward. A guard leaned out to fire, and Jiho's knife was suddenly in his throat. Another guard tried to swing his weapon around, but Jiho grabbed the barrel, redirected it, and used the guard's own trigger pull to shoot his companion. It was brutal. It was efficient. It was terrifying to watch. The remaining guards fell back toward the command center door, trying to form a new defensive line. But Jiho was already through the barricades, and at close range, their heavy armor became a disadvantage. He moved between them like water, his knife finding weak points in their armor with surgical precision. Throat, kidney, femoral artery. Every strike was exactly where it needed to be. When the last guard fell, Jiho stood in front of the command center door, breathing hard, but still steady. Blood covered his hands and arms, most of it not his own. He looked at the sealed door, then back at the bodies behind him. Then he knocked on the door. Inside the command center, Commander Thelvor and Warden Kikstal watched the security feeds in horror. They had seen their elite guards fall. They had seen this single human cut through trained soldiers like they were nothing, and now he was at their door. "Open fire when he enters," Thelvor ordered the remaining guards inside. "All weapons. Don't stop shooting until he's dead." The door slid open. 20 weapons pointed at the entrance, ready to fire the moment Jiho appeared. But he didn't come through the door. Instead, something small and round rolled into the room. The guards had just enough time to recognize it as a plasma grenade before it detonated, filling the command center with white-hot energy that overloaded their armor and cooked them inside their suits. When the smoke cleared, Jiho walked through the door, stepping over bodies. Only 2 people were still alive. Thelvor and Kixtal had been standing behind a reinforced command console, which had protected them from the worst of the blast. They were wounded and burned, but alive. Jiho walked toward them slowly. Thelvor tried to reach for a weapon, but Jiho kicked it away. The commander fell back, his reptilian eyes wide with fear. "Please," Thelvor hissed. "I have information. Military intelligence. Anything you want?" Jiho knelt down in front of him. His face was covered in blood and soot, his dark eyes reflecting the burning equipment around them. He looked like death itself. "You should have let me go," Jiho said quietly. Thelvor screamed. It didn't last long. The command center was silent except for the crackling of burning equipment. Jiho stood over the bodies of Thelvor and Kixtal, his breathing slow and controlled. The anger that had burned in his chest for weeks was gone now, replaced by the familiar emptiness he always felt after killing. It wasn't satisfaction. It wasn't peace. It was just the absence of something that needed to be done. Taijin entered the command center with the rest of the Ghost Division. They had secured the level and were preparing to extract from the station. The mission was complete. They had their man back. "You good?" Taijin asked, studying his friend's face. Jiho nodded. "I'm good." "Then we need to move. Dalvian reinforcements will be here in less than an hour." "Not yet," Jiho said. He walked to the main communication console, which was still functional, despite the damage to the rest of the room. His fingers moved across the controls, accessing the station's long-range transmission systems. "What are you doing?" Taijin asked, sending a message. Somin stepped forward. "That's not part of the mission parameters. We were supposed to get you out quietly." "Nothing about this has been quiet," Jiho replied. "And they need to understand something." He activated the recording system and positioned himself in front of the main camera. Behind him, the destroyed command center was visible along with the bodies of the Dalvian officers. He looked directly into the camera, his face still covered in blood and soot. "My name is Jiho," he said. His voice was calm and clear. "Some of you may know me by another name, the Reaper. I am human. I am a soldier in the Human Coalition Defense Force, and I was taken prisoner by the Dalvian Empire 6 weeks ago." He paused, letting his words settle. Somewhere out there across thousands of star systems, people would hear this message. Leaders, soldiers, regular citizens of dozens of species. "Humanity is new to your galaxy," Jiho continued. "We have been peaceful in our dealings with other species. We have followed diplomatic protocols. We have tried to show you that we can be trusted neighbors and allies. And because of this, many of you have made a mistake. You have mistaken our kindness for weakness. You have mistaken our diplomacy for fear." He gestured to the destruction around him. "This station held 6,000 prisoners. The Dalvian Empire used this place to torture and kill anyone they considered inconvenient. They thought they could do the same to me. They thought humanity would accept the loss of one soldier. They were wrong." His voice remained steady, but there was steel in it now. "Let me tell you something about humans. We remember. We don't forget when someone takes one of our own. We don't forgive. And we will always come for our people. If you take one of us, we will take everything from you." He leaned closer to the camera. "To the Dalvian Empire specifically, you made a choice when you captured me. You made a choice when you refused to release me. You made a choice when you sent mocking messages to our diplomats. And now you will live with the consequences of those choices. The station is destroyed, your officers are dead, and everyone in the galaxy is watching." He stepped back slightly. "To everyone else listening to this message, humanity does not want war. But we will not be easy targets. We will not allow our people to be taken, tortured, or killed without response. Treat us with respect and we will do the same. But if you choose to see us as prey, you will learn what we really are." Jiho reached forward and ended the recording. Then he set the transmission to broadcast on every frequency the station could reach, with orders to repeat the message every hour for the next week. The message would spread across the galaxy like wildfire. "That's going to cause problems," Taijin said quietly. "Good," Jiho replied. They left the command center and made their way to the extraction point. The station was chaos. Some prisoners were still fighting guards. Others were trying to reach escape pods. Some sections were burning. The Ghost Division moved through it all like they were on a training exercise, calm and professional despite the destruction around them. At the extraction point, 3 human ships were waiting. They were small, fast vessels designed for special operations, the kind of ships that could slip in and out of enemy space without being detected. The same ships the Ghost Division had used to infiltrate Christo's station. As they boarded, Jiho looked back at the station one last time. Somewhere inside, Veselin and the Chikris and hundreds of other prisoners were getting their first taste of freedom in years. Not all of them would survive. Not all of them deserved to. But at least they had a chance now. The ships pulled away from the station and jumped to faster-than-light speed before the Dalvian reinforcements arrived. Inside the lead ship, the Ghost Division began the process of coming down from combat readiness. They cleaned weapons, treated minor wounds, and filled out mission reports, routine tasks that helped soldiers transition from the battlefield back to the real world. Ambassador Hyejin was waiting when they arrived at the human military station 3 days later. She stood on the landing bay floor as the ships docked, her diplomatic composure firmly in place. But when Jiho walked down the ramp, she allowed herself a small smile. "Welcome home," she said. "Thank you for the warning you sent them," Jiho replied. "I heard it was very diplomatic. I tried," Hyejin said. "They didn't listen. They rarely do." She gestured for him to follow her, leading him away from the landing bay to a quieter area. The rest of the Ghost Division went through debriefing with military intelligence, but Hyejin wanted to speak with Jiho alone. They sat in a small office overlooking the station's main hangar. Ships moved in and out, bringing supplies and personnel. The human coalition was growing every day, establishing more colonies and building more ships. They were becoming a real power in the galaxy. "Your message has been broadcast across 17 sectors," Hyejin said. "We're receiving responses from dozens of species. Some are supportive, some are concerned. The Dalvian Empire is furious and threatening retaliation." "Let them threaten," Jiho said. "This changes things," Hyejin continued. "Before, humanity was seen as new and untested. Now everyone knows what we're capable of. Some species will respect that. Others will see us as a threat. We are a threat," Jiho said simply. "Better they know that now." Hyejin studied his face. He looked tired but not broken. Weeks in a Dalvian prison had left scars, but they were just more marks to add to the collection. He was still the same person, still the weapon that the human coalition had created. "The government is debating whether to make you a symbol," she said. "The Reaper returned from the dead, the man who destroyed an entire prison station. Some people think we should use your story to show strength. And what do you think?" "I think you're a person, not a symbol. I think you've done enough." Jiho was quiet for a moment, looking out at the ships in the hangar. "I'm a soldier," he finally said. "I do what needs to be done. If that means being a symbol, fine. If it means going back out there and fighting, that's fine too. I don't really care." "You should care," Hyejin said gently. "You should want something more than just the next mission." "Maybe someday," Jiho replied. "But not yet." She nodded, understanding. Some soldiers could leave the battlefield behind. Others couldn't. Jiho was the second type, and trying to force him to be something else would only cause problems. "The Ghost Division has been given 3 weeks of leave," she said, changing the subject. "After that, there's another operation being planned. Taejin said you'd want to be part of it. He knows me well." "Get some rest, Jiho, you've earned it." He stood up, ready to leave. But at the door he paused and looked back at her. "The message I sent, will it make a difference?" Hyejin considered her answer carefully. "Yes. Some species will think twice before threatening humanity now. Others will want to test us to see if the message was true. But overall, the galaxy now understands that we're not helpless, that we have teeth, and sometimes that understanding is more valuable than actual violence." Jiho nodded. That was good enough. He left the office and made his way through the station to the quarters assigned to the Ghost Division. The others were already there, cleaning gear and sharing stories about the mission. They looked up when he entered, and Minho threw him a drink from the small refrigerator they had acquired. "To the Reaper," Minho said, raising his own drink. "Still too tough to kill." The others raised their drinks as well. Jiho accepted the toast with a slight nod. These were his people, his family, the only ones who truly understood what he was and what he had done. Taejin sat down next to him. Hyejin told you about the next operation? She mentioned it. It's going to be bad. Worse than Christos Station. They're all bad. True. They sat in comfortable silence, two old soldiers who had seen too much and done too much to ever truly rest. But that was okay. Some people were meant for peace. Others were meant for war. And as long as the galaxy had threats that needed to be dealt with, the Ghost Division would be there. Humanity had announced its presence to the galaxy. The message was clear and unmistakable. And somewhere out there in the vast darkness of space, other species were learning that lesson the hard way,